Okay, back in the garage. Question 3. We are going to write to a file. This is exciting. So we're going to do that with a function as well. And we're going to discuss another function called open, which is going to open a file. And also there's a what we call a context manager in Python. And that's called a with statement. I'll explain that in a second. But the objective here is to take some texts. Hello, my name is Rob. That's some texts. I'll write that. And we're going to save it into a new text file, which is great because it allows us to permanently store the output of whatever we do. So let's go for it. So write a function to save a message. Okay, so it's a function. So the first thing we've got to do is def. I think what did I say the function was going to be called? Save message, right? And it's going to take two parameters, msg and file name. Okay, let's do that then. Save underscore message. MSG, that's our first parameter. That's when we use this function, we'll feed in the text there. We also want to feed it a file name, and we'll call it message. No, hang on. Yeah, file name. Do that next. File name. Okay. Colon, because it's a function, and we'll open up a new indentation there. Now I'm going to put a comment in here, and it's going to look slightly different from what we usually do. We usually do a hash, don't we? But I'm going to do triple quotes. And this in Python, and in fact in many other languages as well, is called a docstring. And you typically see them on the first line, and when you've started defining a function, and it will just tell the user what the function does. So this function will save a message to a file. Okay, and that's pretty much all I have to describe there. Okay, so here we go. Here's our first business line of code. I'm going to use the word with, and we'll talk through this in a second. Open, now that's a function, so I'm going to have an open bracket there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the file name, and then a comma, and then this is the important bit, in quotation marks I'm going to put a W, and what the W signifies is that I'm opening a file to write to it. So a couple of things might happen. If the file doesn't exist, it will create it and then write. If the file does exist, it won't create a new one, but it will overwrite what was in the file originally. So there's a couple of other characters we can do. We could have done an R to read a file without writing to it. And there's a couple more, I forget what they are, we'll cover those in turn probably. Okay, now the last thing here is I want to have an as statement here as well. I'm just going to call it as f, right? And that is going to give me a variable into which I can store that file object to do stuff with. Okay. So that with statement is going to require a colon again, and now what we're going to do is we're going to write whatever it is we've got stored in message to the file. So f dot write msg. Okay, and now this with statement here is actually doing a lot of things under the hood here. It's opening the file, but once we come out of this, it's going to close the file as well. That's really important. There are a couple of other ways you could have done this without a with statement, but it would have been important to close the file too. And it's important you close your files because if you, for whatever reason, want to edit the file somewhere else, it might not let you. You'll get an error because it's already open. You certainly won't be able to delete the file if it's already open, and you'll get errors basically, especially if you're running long-winded scripts. Okay, so I think that's my function defined. You'll notice that I haven't got a return on this. It doesn't really need one So all that means is by default it will return none, but actually what I needed it to do would have been done, so it would have written this message. So I'm gonna leave this function without a return statement this time. Okay, let's compile. Nothing should happen. Yep, that's correct. Right, how are we going to use this now? So let's have some examples. Let's save our first message. Save message. Okay, and hello, my name is Rob. Okay, that's my message, and I'm going to save it as message 1.txt. Now it's important you put the extension on these files as well, because if you don't, it will create the file, but the next time you try to open it, it won't know how to handle it. Okay, so you'll have to put your extension in. It could have been a txt. If you're dealing with a bit of data, the most likely thing you're going to do there is a .csv. So let's run this and see what happens. Okay, nothing's come out of the terminal, but you'll see in my project on the left here, I've now got a message1.txt file, and stored in it is some text. Isn't that fantastic? So just to prove to you I could have done some other stuff, how about, let's think about this. How about we create a really long string full of numbers? So I'm actually gonna, let's have a think about this. Let's import random. This is just, sorry, I've completed the exercise now, by the way. I'm just doing this for fun, right? And we'll import random, and we will create a loop for I in range. Let's do 100 numbers. Okay, we're going to create a random number using my rand int function. I'll do it between 0 and 1,000. And then I'm going to do that 1,000 times. So actually I'm going to create a message, message string. And every time I create a number, I'm going to append to that. So I'm going to do message string plus or equals num. I'm also going to add what am I going to do here? Yeah, I'm going to add this character. So that \n signifies a, oh hang on, I've done this wrong, haven't I? No, that's right. Signifies a new line. And then let me just check my sanity a sec. I'm going to print out that message string to see if it's worked. I should get a list of 1,000 numbers. Oh, hang on, I can't add that together because I need to convert this to a string. Okay, so I've generated a random number, converted it into a string, I've added a new line character, and I've appended it to my empty string message. Will that work? Yes. Yes, it will. And so now I want to save that to some sort of data file. So I can use my save message again. This time, I'm not going to type a message in here. I'm going to use that message string that I've created above. And I'm going to create a new file called data. And this time I'm going to do CSV, and it should handle that. Okay. Sorry, this is wrong. Data, not data view. Data string. Okay. Message string. So this time when I run this, it's created me another file which is called data.csv, and there it is. There's my lovely data. Now in Visual Studio Code, I have a little package that handles CSVs. Let me just take a look at it. I think it's in the extensions manager. If I type CSV here, yeah, it's the Rainbow CSV I like to use. So you may want to add this extension because otherwise your CSVs will look pretty boring. It gives you a bit of, even though I haven't really done much in my CSV, in the future when I've got multiple columns, multiple things going on, it will make it a bit easier to read in your viewer here. All right, I think that's the end of that question. Let's move on to question 4.